Hey, John Ty here, author of Crush It with Kindle, and welcome to this second of two videos on finding the Kindle royalty sweet spot. So let's take a look at what we're going to cover in this video. First of all, we're going to look at how you can calculate the royalty sweet spot for your book. Then I'll show you an example of the sort of typical results that you would expect for a self-published Kindle book. And then finally, we'll look at why this is so important in terms of maximizing your royalties. So before we get into calculating the royalty sweet spot, let me share a few pointers with you about finding it. First of all, as we saw in video 1, the sweet spot is probably going to be the $2.99 price point, but it can be different for every book depending on all sorts of variables. So the only way to be sure is to test. Now, in order to test, you need steady sales. So there's no point testing a new price when you've just run a promotion, for example, because you won't know what is making the difference. So what I recommend is that you wait until your book is making consistent, steady sales at its current price. And then when you change the price, test for at least 7 days at that new price. Again, you want to give your book a chance to bed down at that new price and find its equilibrium. And by the way, 7 days is probably a minimum. It may take longer. Okay, so now let's look at how you would calculate the royalty sweet spot for your book. And we'll do that by looking at an example of the sort of typical results that you would expect for a self-published Kindle book. To do that, I've created this table. And what I should say is that while the numbers in this table are hypothetical, they are very much reflective of the sort of results you would expect. Something else to mention is that we're not so much interested in the absolute number of sales or the total amount of royalties. What's important here are the relative numbers at the different price points. So let me talk you through this table, and we've got a range of price points from 99 cents all the way up to $14.99. Those prices from $2.99 to $9.99 all fall into the 70% royalty bracket. And I've highlighted that by shading them in a darker blue than the prices that are in the 35% royalty bracket. So straight away you can see that in terms of total royalties, the royalty sweet spot is $2.99. And I've highlighted that on the table there in red. In this example, you're getting $41.80 in royalties compared to just $25.11 at the $3.99 price point and only $15.75 at the 99-cent price point. And the reasons for this are simple. So at 99 cents, while you're making a lot more sales, your book is forced into that 35% royalty bracket, which means you're only getting 35 cents per book. So multiply that 35 cents by the 45 sales in our example, you get $15.75 in total royalties. Compare that to the $2.99 sweet spot, and while you're making less than half the number of sales, just 20 sales, your royalties per book go up to $2.09, up almost 6 times. So now you have a total royalty of $41.80. Now, because demand for Kindle books is normally quite price sensitive, once you go above that $2.99 sweet spot, the drop off in the number of sales outweighs the increase in royalties per book, as you can see from this table. And that effect is even more exaggerated if you price your book at $10 or above, because at that price your book is forced back down into the 35% royalty bracket. And that's reflected here in our example, where at $14.99 the book is making just one sale and only $5.24 in royalties. This chart shows the same results as a bar graph, and it just reinforces the fact that in this example the $2.99 price point is head and shoulders above the rest when it comes to maximizing your royalties. But again, I just want to stress that there are all sorts of variables at play, and so it can be different, and the only way to be sure is to test. Now, do you need to test all of these different price points? Well, probably not. What I would recommend is that you start by testing at 99 cents, $2.99 and $3.99. And if you get results that are as clear as this, you really don't need to go on testing, because you know that above the $3.99 price point, the results are just going to keep dropping off. On the other hand, if you've got steady sales and the results are much closer, then you may want to expand your test range by going up to $4.99 and even $9.99. The sort of situation where you may maximize your royalties at a higher price point is when your book is doing very, very well. Perhaps you've got a big promotion going or something like that. And because of the book's success, the demand becomes less price sensitive. That's why traditionally published books with big marketing budgets behind them, and or books written by popular big name authors with an existing following, can maximize their royalties at higher price points. One thing you may have noticed is that I haven't included the $1.99 price point. And I can illustrate why on the next slide. So this slide shows a KDP pricing support graph. And as a reminder, Amazon generates a graph like this for each book that you publish on Kindle, and it's based on historic data for books that it thinks are similar to yours. The orange line represents total royalties in relative terms, and the dotted grey line represents total sales, again in relative terms. The shape of that orange line very much reflects the graph that we were looking at on the previous page. And going back to that $1.99 price point, what we can see is that we're getting the worst of both worlds. In terms of royalties, we're only getting about half the royalties we're getting at $2.99. And in terms of sales, we're only just getting above half the number of sales that we would get at 99 cents. So it's neither here nor there, and that's why I don't bother with it. Finally, I want to take a quick look at why this is so important in terms of maximizing your royalties. So, comparing our $2.99 sweet spot where we're making $41.80 in royalties against the 99-cent price point, we can see that we're making an extra 165% profit. Less of a difference at $3.99, but it's still an extra 66% profit. And as the price goes up, the difference gets more and more dramatic. At $4.99, it's an extra 139% profit. At $9.99, it's an extra 199% profit. And at $14.99, it's an extra 697% profit. And the moral is, you must test. If you don't, you may be leaving lots of money on the table. Okay, so let's wrap up with the key takeaways from videos 1 and 2. 1. To get 70% royalties, you must price your book at between $2.99 and $9.99. Outside of that price range, your royalties automatically drop to 35%. $2.99 is likely to generate the most royalties. However, it varies, so always test. You need steady sales to test, and you need at least 7 days at each price point to test. That is probably a minimum, and it may take longer. So this is John Ty. I hope you found the video useful, and I look forward to catching up with you on the next one.